Hi, everybody. This is Samrat Kishor. I welcome you all to the Baseline Show. Uh, this week is very special because we have got a lot of activities going on within the Baseline protocol as well. And for those of you who are tuning to this show for the first time, please do subscribe to the Baseline channel. We keep making our announcements via this channel, and we do this show every week, Wednesday at noontime EST, as an outreach effort for reaching out to more and more people. Keith is super distracting right now, by the way. So we do the show for as an outreach effort for bringing on more people, more baseliners across the world. We talk to industry leaders and brainstorm on ideas for baselining and understand trends about data sharing and multi-party coordination. So in that series, we have Gabriel with us. He's from Cartesi and he's joining us from Brazil. Welcome, Gabriel, to the Baseline Show. It's an honor to
Thank
have
you,
you.
thank you. No, it's my honor.
Excellent. And we have with Gabriel, we have our other baseliners as well. We have Mark Remza, we have Keith, we have Andreas, Yoav, and we have Anant also currently off video. And we're going to be kickstarting this episode today with some announcements. So we recently published our blog for February, the baseline blog, and which is written by Keith. So Keith, would you like to take 2 minutes just to talk about the blog post and what can people gain out of that?
Yeah, sure. I think I hit on it last time, but just to, kind of sum up
Now
again.
we published, yeah.
Yeah. Now that it's out there, right? So the original idea, behind the blog was to give everybody kind of a glimpse through the looking glass into, how to build a baseline system. Let's kind of, pull away the shroud from some of the mystery. And then as I was writing that, I'm like, well, we tend to, as more of us gain knowledge about the baseline protocol, more we're involved in baseline every day, we take for granted where we started, and we kind of constantly go through the cycle where we end up back there where we take for granted the starting point, right? So I thought, well, if it's a new kind of blog series, maybe let's start back with the basics. A blog about the basics. It's a reflection for the speech or the kind of presentation we did an Amster base in Amsterdam, a place for people to start to kind of get the foundation of their mental model set up and how baseline works, the kind of underlying concepts. It's still, so once you finish reading it, you should be kind of really primed for digging into some of the deeper material and really understanding what a baseline implementation would look like, right? And that's ready for the next part of the series, which is TBD at this point in time for release.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the idea behind it. Yeah. Thank you, Samrat.
Thanks, Keith. And the other announcement, which makes this week special, is also publication of our roadmap for 2023. So we recently also published our baseline protocol roadmap. I will post the links to both of these things along with the video so that people can get access to it. But this is a very aspirational year for us as a group, and we intend to achieve a lot. And there are some things flowing back from the previous year as well. But I'm very excited, very pumped up for the year ahead. So with that, I come back to our guest for today. We're going to be learning a little bit about uh, optimistic rollups. How optimistic should we be about optimistic rollups? And yeah, we will also learn a bit more about Cartesi. So let's start with Gabriel, your introduction, your background, your motivations of what you're doing. From in our previous call, I understand that you've been in the space at the right times, at the right places for a very long time now. So let's hear a bit about you, and then we move on to Cartesi, and then to the topic of optimistic
Yeah,
rollups.
yeah, thank you, thank you. So I've been working in this space since 2016. I was just finishing my degree at college. Got hired by Consensus. Did a bunch of cool shit there. It was a very interesting time to be inside the space. I stayed there for a little while, like 2 years and something. And then I left them to join Terminal. And we were trying to do so many nice stuff, pivots here, pivots there. It became Flake. At that time, it didn't make much sense anymore for me. And I have a friend from college that was working at a small company doing some blockchain stuff, very weird things. They were saying something about proving computation. I was like, oh, what the hell are you talking about? And then I learned a little bit about Cartesi on Osaka's DevCon. And then a few months after I joined the company, like in very brief strokes, that is my history with blockchain. And yeah, for today, I would like us to have a conversation about rollups. I feel like many of you guys already know so much about it, but it's always interesting to talk about it again. Like what Keith was saying before, we take things for granted. Like we already know so much about why we're doing things, and we forget why they were there in the first place. And for people joining the ecosystem is like very confusing. And so I saw that people have already discussed a little bit about zero knowledge and more or less like what zero knowledge rollups are. But why rollups really? Like, why do we need rollups? What is the point of having it? I guess for me, it was quite clear because I was in the space for some years, and I saw what was happening with Ethereum. Like I saw many applications getting to the network, striving and thriving to some extent, and trying to build nice stuff, only to be replaced by a new industry being adapted to the space. And really through the process of what we've been calling like gentrification, being outpriced for their for the sweet spot of how much people are willing to pay for the application they are trying to play with, right? And through time, we saw many attempts to try to fix this: state channels, plasma, side chains, competing networks, but really they didn't really address the reality of things. Basically, they were postponing and giving some oxygen to the industry to have time to figure it out. And I think like rollups is really it's really very promising because nobody seems to have figured it out 100%, but many intelligent people do agree that there is something there. It's worth looking into it and still like try to figure out the nitty gritty bits of details that needs to be sorted in order to make it 100% decentralized, as secure as possible, and of course give us all the power that we need, right? And but then we get to power, because at the end of the day, we are trying to increase TPS. We are trying to increase transaction complexity, like really like CPU memory intensive tasks. And we always hit the limits of whatever is trying to expand the Ethereum capacity, right? Like I feel if we look right now to what the main players in the space, they are trying to do rollups for Ethereum. They kind of end up copying Ethereum a little bit, and I feel we are repeating a cycle to some extent because we are giving some more oxygen to the system, but we're gonna run out at some point. What we do then, but like I was saying, it's an open question for everybody. And when it comes to zero knowledge, there's a lot of great stuff coming because of it. There's a lot of new possibilities, even in privacy, really. Because, for instance, for now, zero knowledge rollups are now really about privacy, but zero knowledge itself, it's giving us that possibility. And the question really comes to like, how much capacity can zero knowledge really give us when it comes to transaction power. I feel like whenever we are in a good place with zero knowledge, we can be even better to some extent. I'm always talking about the power, right? Like it's different characteristics, but when it comes to power, if you can do great with zero knowledge, you probably can do much better with optimistic rollups because they are simpler. But then if you see what's going on with Arbitrum and Optimism, the main players, they still have this idea of public networks to some extent, where you're sharing resources with other applications. And that is basically what Ethereum already does. It is really good for composability, to have interaction with dApps. And it's great, but at the same time, you're falling back to the same trap again, where you can have an application be so successful that then maybe it's difficult to run other dApps inside the same space. They're still competing for resources. That is to say that I think it's important that we start really looking to the dApp-centric rollups or app-specific rollups, or any new key name people come up with, because right now it's not really settled. But this idea of having a rollup specific for an application and try to figure out how to go from there to still keep the same level of communication, interactivity between the applications, such and such. And that's when maybe we get to a point that we don't see this problem be reproduced again and again and again. And we reach to a point that now we can just know that the scalability is really on the dApp itself. It's not a common public problem to all applications. I feel like I talked a lot already.
No,
How
no,
do you
no. I
guys
think
feel
Gabriel. So
about
you.
this?
So
Yeah.
so just to throw a number in here, right? So the yesterday, all top 15 rollups combined had just 2x Ethereum volume. So there is no danger that any of those are going to be maxed out anytime soon.
Interesting.
It's like anybody wants to look at that l2beat.com, just go check it out. It's like Arbitrum is like that's combined, right? Arbitrum was like at 6 odd TPS yesterday, compared to like 13 for not that it could, Arbitrum could do like a couple of thou, right? Without breaking a sweat, but there's just no activity, right? There's no, even if I had even if I had 10 CryptoKitties like on Arbitrum right now working at the same time, it's still not a problem, right? It's like you can run Gods Unchained and it's like Axie Infinity and shit like that on the same roll up, and you would still not break a sweat. Okay, so it's like that scalability right now is not the problem.
I would add this though, right? Because this group of folks here thinks a lot about enterprise systems, connecting to blockchain, right? And what does that scalability picture look like? And the truth is, there are enterprise systems today that are just for single companies that actually have higher TPS than entire blockchains, right? Because they're doing supply chain things, IoT things. They're getting absolutely hammered, right? So a really intriguing thing that could happen in the future is that, if one of those kind of use cases comes to blockchain, it could break one. It could break a rollup. And it's not a topic that I see discussed very, very often. because now you're trying to optimize for, transaction throughput and decentralization all at once, which is a very, challenging enterprise architecture to get to. So Gabriel, I would ask the question, right? What is Cartesi doing to simulate, that kind of, stress test, right? As if you will, because you mentioned that this is something that you guys are really into in terms of, high performance compute, essentially.
Yes. I wouldn't say it's the main focus, but it's one of them. Currently, we've been playing with applications that haven't been tested in blockchain yet. Some of the games we ported, one of our friends just did it on a weekend just for fun. Like, can Cartesi play Doom? And he ported Doom to it. And it's just in a different category entirely, in the sense. So if we're thinking about simple transactions, things that are in the simpler category, like let's say Bitcoin transactions, maybe you could have a improved version of a rollup that would absolutely hammer and smoke Cartesi 100%. But then we are also focusing on content scalability, which was something that I would address later. But since we are there, which is like, we have decades of knowledge in software development about processes, libraries, frameworks, operation systems, and whatnot. And we simply have not ported it to blockchain yet. Like, yes, blockchain is something new, like you had a new database, really? Yeah, that's technically it. But then it does not integrate right now. Like, you do some adapters, you bring information back and forth, you do a lot of translations, but it's not really like you can implement a SAP system entirely inside a blockchain. Like, you can integrate those for sure. Maybe that's even the better approach, arguably. But then suddenly, yeah, right.
No, why would I? Why would I run SAP on a blockchain? Because it makes no sense. I don't have a double spend problem in an SAP system. So it's like, why in the world would I?
But here's the thing: you can't. You can't. That's not even in the cards. So I mean, if you have, for instance, you want to play with the DAX, but you don't want to do the whole matching system, the order book matching system, and you could just import a Java framework already built on that, years of battle tests, and now you have to suddenly do it all over again, and you cannot even do an MVP with that. It might not even be that good, but that performant. But here's the thing: it's working. You could get started with that, but you can't. It's not possible. So one of the things we do address as well is, like, instead of being based on EVGAM on the rollup side, we are based on RISC-V, which is a platform processor. You can have an operating system. It can run any language. And that's the change as well that we are trying to bring. Like, now you can do things like image recognition using OpenCV inside your dApp. What for? You tell me. That's up to you. Like, that's a new possibility for your dApp. And you can use game engines that people have been playing with for so long. There's just so many possibilities. It's like we're introducing computer all over again. Like, what can you do with computer and internet? I don't know. It's up for the people to figure it out.
Yeah, but why do I need this shit anchored on chain? It's like literally. I mean, it's like I know games that are running on like a 5 cluster subnet on Avalanche, and I'm like, so you're running this on AWS in a you're running this actually on a Kubernetes cluster. So it's like, are you really shitting me right now? It's like, it makes, why? That is all complete bullshit. It's like, if you need a chain, right, you have a double spend problem. You have I just use digital signature, right? I use DIDs and I can generate data integrity, right? I don't need anything else, right? It's like I just make sure that I can check that my keys are I can publicly validate that my keys are active. Why else do I need the chain unless I have a double spend problem, right? Unless I have a multi-party, trust deficit problem where I need a verifiably correct compute instant, right? That I can
100%.
then verify on chain, and I use the provable time linearization aspect of an L1 as the primary thing. That's all I needed for, unless I have a double spend problem. If I have a double spend problem, we're back to yes, you need some form of either consensus, or you need to have you need to be able to have the data to prove or prevent double spend on the L1, in which case you either are, as optimistic rollups do, you have fraud proofs, or as ZK rollups do, you put the data directly on chain by using ZK rollup proofs.
Yeah.
But that's so it's like those are very specific problems focused on double spend and double spend only. And then we have the reason why it's important for that is your rollups are islands, right? They're like the Greek islands, right? And Greek islands that don't have good ferry systems between them really suck. You know why? Because no one goes there, right? And
we should find an equivalent of greenwashing for the blockchain world, why people
so you need like a good ferry system, aka bridges, right? But the bridges are for assets, right? I can move data back and forth. That's like boom. That's not unless I have to prove a state, right? And then I need to validate that, oh yeah, what you did over there is actually provably correct, right? So that's why you need zero knowledge proof, right? Because then you can move stuff, right? So it's so again, specific problems for specific solutions for very specific problems. If I have a gaming app, who the cares if this is running on a chain? It doesn't matter. It's like run it on a fat EKS cluster and rock. It's like it's like they're not like Fortnite skins. You trade Fortnite skins. Okay, then I'm back to my double spend problem because I have valuable assets, and then I have illiquid assets that I'm trading on an exchange that's not registered. Okay, that's an interesting notion. So otherwise, all of this stuff is like entirely meaningless and vapid.
Lot of hot air.
Right. So let's focus on double spend problem, and then we're in business. Otherwise,
Gabriel, I would request, if what we could do is we could maybe learn more about what Cartesi is doing, and henceforth, maybe form our thoughts around it, because what you mentioned also sounds very, very powerful. And yeah, it's the good thing is that we get together and we brainstorm on these shows, and then we do try and spot things which are really valuable for us as a group as well, and let's see. So yeah, why don't you introduce Cartesi, and if you have any slides also you can present. I've enabled sharing it.
Before you do though, I want to jump in on the other side and just disagree with Andreas to some degree, because it doesn't happen enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely right.
Push back, man. Let's get going, man. Let's make this interesting for the viewers.
There's a million people, million companies out there. going to solve that pragmatic stuff. But we also need places like Cartesi that are just going to push the boundary in every direction, not knowing maybe exactly what it's going to be used for, because we don't know what's out there yet. So not to say that it's the only thing we should have, but on top of all the stuff you mentioned, let's have those too, right? Let's expand the horizon, right? Let's go beyond the edge. Cartesi.
I
iPhone, the
I
iPhone,
can't.
exactly, the iPhone for compute. That's what Keith is advocating for. So the Keith is the Steve Jobs of distributed compute.
Excellent.
I tell you that.
Yeah, I don't know of anyone who would want to run SAP on a decentralized system, but if someone is doing that, I'm really curious about it. Please reach out to me.
This conversation is making me want to do it.
Like
this conversation makes me want to do it right now.
So
yes.
but like to bring it back to Cartesi, it's like if I'm using Cartesi, I put the token in, look at like an arcade game. What am I getting out? What's the thing that is most succinctly that Cartesi is really all about as a roll up and other things.
So I have actually two examples that I wanted to bring up to
Awesome.
that kind of
Please, yes.
counterpoints of what Andrew is saying. Like, yes, if you're very pragmatic, no, 100%. You're gonna have like your engineers like nitty-pick and really drill down to whatever is the actual problem and solve it as simple as possible. But then people want to do silly things. Like right now, it's very boring for people who like to play chess, because whenever they go online, they can just they never know if they are playing against a real person or if it is just a person playing also the table with a bot. And one of the things we seen in these hackathons that we participated is this guy came up with this idea of AI bots that play chess. So basically, you submit your agent, you code it, you say how it should, what is the strategy of it, and now you can bet on the winning or losing of the match based on your agent, and you know that the thing is fair because you have the verification of the computation happening on both sides. You don't have to dispute that. And another game that Ryan kind of like made me remember is Dinder. It's kind of like I forgot the name of the game. You know the game where you have several colors and you need to shoot a color to make a straight line in a way. Candy Crush, yeah. It's a mix and match of Candy Crush with a battle game. So it feels like Pokemon to some extent. So you have characters on your screen, and you can power it up by smashing the candies, so to speak, and the colors match to the players, the characters, I mean, and that will boost or decrease the level of your attack, and that goes with the gameplay, right? And that is all verified as well in the Cartesi's optimistic rollup. I know it's silly because we're talking games, but it really displays a little bit of how people can be using this later for serious stuff. But here's the thing, they don't take too much time coding everything from scratch, inventing a logarithmic library because it's not available on Solidity yet to make things work.
I think the gaming example is actually, it's a big focus area and interest area, across Web3. And I think it makes sense because, yes, independent servers on an AWS may be cheaper to run, and you can run a bit like a gaming business there. But for the players that get invested in the game, you can be really sad when that server gets shut down someday, right? So
yes.
if you have these games that are architected in a way to be decentralized, and the players can engage with it anytime, in this decentralized system, like just put the quarter in, if you will, at any time, you actually have much more longer lasting communities that are in place there. I think that's the undercurrent. I think that actually makes Web3 gaming really stick around long term is that it's ownership of the community, and it's, you know, sustainable long term.
Yep. And then to talk about like more meaningful to some extent things, we're seeing in East San Francisco a pair of guys on the hackathon. They use Cartesi to solve things like the mango hack. So the mango hack, I don't like calling the mango hack because it was not really a hack. Basically, they just pumped the price of a token, collateralized, got the loan, and never returned the funds, of course. And one of the problems with that is because they didn't have the first the computational power, yes, but on our rollup they could, but then they didn't have the expertise or didn't build up their algorithms to make the the risk assessment of assets to see how much they can allow for the risk on a loan, right? It's something very basic in the Web 2.0 world. And then it's a trivial thing to avoid, yet it happened, and it could to some extent happen to Uniswap as well and other lending protocols. I mean, and here's the thing, this pair of guys, basically they imported some very well-known open source library to do this kind of risk assessments, probably not even the best one. But basically they displayed in a proof of concept that you could have updates to a smart contract on inside Ethereum, doing a risk assessment constantly through a rollups to check the health of the asset. You can even argue that you can improve the parameters of such rollup because it's very specific. You're not meant to be doing much off-chain, basically just crunching numbers, to even have faster updates to the chain, so you can always be as correct as possible before making the loans. So that's one application that we can like straight up see that it improves the industry as a whole. Because the thing is, it is really easier to just trust what other people built before. Like you can evaluate whether or not it's trustworthy, yes, but then you do not need to know every nitty-gritty details of how that thing works and just build on top of it. That's how we've been doing things so far, and Web3 maybe kind of forgot about that.
Sure. I mean, that is it again, to outsource heavy compute somewhere, right, is and then import, and the results is great, right? So if now let me play the decentralization maximalist, right? It's like it's like, okay, prove to me that the risk assessment was not manipulated.
You should run your node. You should run a node and dispute the results.
Okay, so then I need a dispute. Then I need to constantly check, right? So I can't check on chain whether what you're doing is right. So I need to constantly watch. So I have what's called the watcher problem, right? So
not necessarily.
Yeah,
not
you have a
necessarily.
liveness
Let's
problem.
say no, not necessarily. Depends on the source of the data. I never said anything about the source of the data. You can just be scrubbing the Ethereum at itself.
Yeah, I know, but the risk assessment. So even if you publish your algorithm, right? You need to someone else needs to then run the same platform,
yeah,
that you do, in order to validate your result, and then
that's the principle with Ethereum net.
Dispute
Bitcoin.
it. But yeah. That's not. But that's not. My counter argument is that's not. Yeah, but that's I'm back to a consensus algorithm, and then as soon as I have a consensus algorithm that I need to then, now I dispute or trust, and two need to come to consensus. Then say a third one comes in and says no. It's like, and then a fourth, a fifth, and then
not
all
necessarily.
of a sudden,
I don't think. Okay, I think there's something missing here. We can do the fraud
proof of correct.
No.
You need it. You need a zero knowledge proof of
No,
correctness. Yeah.
not necessarily.
So I've had the same arguments with every single optimistic rollup, right? The argument is the following: you are creating a compute power arms race, because if the more heavy compute you utilize as inputs into your transactions by outsourcing, right, the more the more you're forcing a challenger to run this, to have the same compute power. That's currently obviously not a problem. It's obviously currently not a problem because no one is using anything, right? So it's like it's easy. But if you're actually going and talking, oh, now we're running risk assessment. Now we're deriving forward rates for markets based on that input. Then it becomes a real challenge, because
I don't see
because then you
I
need
don't
to
see
run.
that's as a big of a problem as you're stating it to be, because you have all the state transitions of your machine. As things moves along and that actually becomes a problem, you can always change the node to publicize as well the state transitions in between. So let's say you have a billion cycle of CPU there, you can put every 10,000, every million, and then people can do just statistical sampling of the transitions and get you on the hook for a piece of the computation.
Oh, so you're publishing something, and that is and I should trust that. I should trust that data.
So here's the thing.
Again, I need to run the
you should not
entire thing in
necessarily
order.
trust. That's the best scenario for sure. But if you're having something that big, you don't need to necessarily be the one doing the 100% of the process. Every person can be checking different pieces of the process. It's in a way similar to, not truly, not exactly, but in a way that's similar to what the zero knowledge proof does. You don't need to run the full thing to be able to check whether or not the thing is correct. I mean,
you're doing
do you really want to? Do you really want to? Do you really want to put to risk a very big pool of staked money just because you think people cannot run your computation? Is that it? Really? It's not something really that easy to falsify, because you need to be falsifying a very strategic way to give hashes to do in between that makes sense, but at the same time gets you to the exact end result that you wish for. And then that is not that simple. That is not that simple. It becomes ever more complex as the software gets complex as well.
If I do that and I run flash loans on a
Flash loans,
LTunes, then I'm so it's like there are, believe me, there are very sophisticated scenarios, and it all comes back, bringing this back to baseline, right? So multi-party coordination under zero knowledge, right? So the reason why you run like these, it's like, you're right, darks are nothing but is basically large volume statistical sampling that you're simulating, right? Because what do you use? You use interactive oracle proofs, right? That you're just like you do a very specific transformation for, and then you're sampling a very large space, right? But the point is, unless you publish it, the point is, you can verify that. You can compress all of that, and you can verify it on chain, which means I don't need to have this type of computational capability available. This can be, again, decentralized. I'm putting my decentralization maximalist on. Not that I would.
But here's the thing.
Disagree with you.
That decentralization cap is not working that good though, because yes, I can verify the computation, but I can still be censored if I cannot run the computation, right?
That's
I'm
why
I'm
you have
arguing.
that's why you have
I'm
that's why you have something like verifier.sol on that you can run on an L1, right? So you can do
no. I'm not
you
talking
can
about
verify the proof.
I'm not talking about the end result being correct. I'm talking about not even being able to participate on it, because now there's just a single node, a handful of nodes that can accept my transaction. How that's being enforced? That's an open problem right now with rollups as well, with sequences and whatnot. But I don't see that
Many
being
people.
very targeted by the
I mean, for
decentralization
enterprises,
maximalists as
you know,
much.
for enterprises don't really care about censorship because they run their own rollup and then they work with their partners on that rollup. And then that's it. I mean, Ryan can tell you a lot about that from his experience with provide. And I can tell you that, you know, talking to the likes of like AT&T, Verizon, Ford, GM, Denso, and so forth, they're like, yeah, no, it's like we'll run our own and we have ours, and it's like that's the enterprise paradigm is like we run our own shit, and you know, you come and then we're actually then can put something on chain that proves everything's correct, so it's good for the auditors, and that's it, end of story. So it's like and then they typically don't have like scenarios where they need to do like billions of transactions a day, right? They may have a few hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million transactions with their partners in the largest cases. So
And
I think that's
all well and good. 100%, that's very valid. But what I'm saying is like that's not 100% of the situations. That's not all the scenarios. So
that's true. That's true.
What
Yeah.
I'm saying is
true.
like, okay, you get to be able to, of course, do something simple as a risk analysis written in any language that you want, as long as it's you're able to do programs like what we do in smart contracts and whatnot. You can do that, yes, but then the cost of doing that is gonna be much more expensive. Of course, if the problem is important enough, then you pay the cost. But then it becomes it's a constant that you have to initiate any project. At all times, you have this friction because we already have all this knowledge. When we are not using it as is, we are always re-implementing things, porting things over and over and over again. At some point, if the cost of having zero knowledge in the world is that good to pay for, maybe in 50 years we are not going to be talking about that, because we can have Intel chips, zero knowledge, and we can run even operation systems, but that's not a reality of today. And of course, for big enterprises, they can pay the upfront cost for that. But for smaller startups, two people's teams that are trying to do something nice and get things going, they're screwed. They're really screwed if they try to get with zero knowledge.
I completely hear you. Now here's the other interesting bit, right? And that's again where you're coming to digital assets, right? As soon as you touch digital assets, right? It's like they right now you have regulatory enforcement actions coming down or being actively threatened, which means it's like you don't make sure your OFAC compliant, like you're looking at time and Rikers, right? So it's like we're at that point. No, we're at that point right now, and I kid you not. There's like MiCA was just passed in October in Europe, which is the first digital asset framework that is now going to be applied across 27 member states, which is good, right? On the one hand. On the other hand, right, now the sort of like the free flow is over because you need to be able to be compliant, right? And you need to have the tooling to be compliant. Unless you're just doing gaming and doing other stuff with where the value that's at stake is not large, then who cares, right? But as soon as there's any amount of money involved, you're moving value you're up the creek. You need compliance, instrumentation, and all of that. And it can be done in a decentralized or federated way, or it's like, but you need zero knowledge stuff for that. And it's possible, but we need to actively push that envelope, because there are legitimate use cases where people want to maintain their privacy while at the same time being compliant, and we want to get rid of as many intermediaries as we can, so we don't have to have people hold the bag for us, right? And enterprises there too. It's like, I don't want to have to hold the bag for anybody else but me. Right, Ryan, can you tell us a little bit about those scenarios that you're encountering, where you're like, no, I'm not gonna hold your bag. It's like, I'm gonna hold only my bag, but I don't trust you anyway.
So, and I'll phrase this back to a question to Gabriel to kind of think about, because when you think about these B2B enterprise landscapes, and this is an issue that we look at very deeply at Provide, is B2B also doing B2B from like large corporation to small corporation, right? Of course, the large corporation, they can acquire any kind of enterprise architecture they want. They want like the PRVD stack, they can run that, get commercial support, awesome, right? And we also open source that, so the smaller folks can run on their own. But from the Cartesi perspective, what are your thoughts around these smaller entities that that want to work with decentralized tech in coordination to larger entities? Like, are there use cases or perspectives you have in that domain of different entities of different sizes coordinating through each other through Cartesi?
I personally haven't heard about anything related to that, like any attempts to be doing that. I guess we are in a too early of stage to have this kind of questions being flowing around. So I don't know, really, I don't know. But if I think about how Cartesi have been doing things in the past, I guess we will always try to anticipate the necessities of those trying to use the technology to somehow try to ease the impact on them if possible. But to be honest, I have no idea. Because this is a different beast.
It's I asked you a very niche question.
But Gabriel, your views in general are much appreciated. I think you have a lot of clarity on these things, which I really appreciate. There's one question which came for the group, and I'm going to read that out from the chat, which is from Paulo. ZK rollups also need computing power to generate ZK proofs every single time in optimistic rollups. Rollups need to run the full thing only when there's a challenge. So I think Paulo was trying to support somebody's point there. Okay, and I just realized that we are 50 minutes in to the show, and I absolutely didn't realize where the time flew. Thank you so much, Gabriel. This chat has been so engaging. And but where do we go to learn more about Cartesi, and how do we get engaged?
How do I deploy a game?
You can definitely go to the Cartesi website and check the docs. And pretty soon we are gonna be releasing as well a new tab inside the site of showcases. We are getting all these hackathon projects, other company partners that have been doing things with Cartesi, so people can have a sense of what is being developed inside the Cartesi architecture. Yeah.
Sure. And as you may have guessed, the baseline is more focused on digital supply chain, more of corporate stuff, right? We are trying and bringing in multi-parties, which are largely corporates, right? So why would you think that people should care about Cartesi? What do you have for them, for the large businesses?
I mean, for the very large businesses, I guess I would say it's easier to bootstrap things and test things out and really to do MVPs. But really, if you think about it, if somehow you can still do things on zero knowledge, I guess it makes more sense for them to go that route, because at any given point, you're not reproducing computation all over again. You just do the proofs at once, and the other side have a very small footprint to verify that, instead of being another validator node, right? So I guess it really depends on what applications they are looking for. If they are looking to play with the ecosystem and see how things work with the minimal impact on their development sides, with the minimal costs, sure. But I don't know. It's the different public.
Okay. So what we can do is we can probably engage with Mu a little more. We have a very able mesh team doing baseline work full time. So I think we could find some synergies there, maybe on a subsequent call, and then see how baselining and Cartesi can go together. One last question: are you going to eat Denver?
100%, 100%. Flying out next
Can I
week.
ask-
Yeah, very
Can
excited.
I ask one more question? So what's your
Yeah,
top
yeah,
use case, Gabriel? What's the top use case you've seen Cartesi used for?
More often than not, people just think of games whenever we finish explaining Cartesi. They go straight there. They go straight
So they're
there,
what
yeah.
they're running
SAP.
Unity on they're running Unity on Cartesi and
Not yet, not yet. But we've seen some people trying to compile things from Unity to Cartesi, and then we get to a point like, okay, maybe you should just be doing the logic. You don't need to render things, right?
Okay.
Inside Cartesi.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, 3D rendering at that rate is that's an interesting
We did
thing.
have one project that was doing programmatic NFTs. So that's a funny thing, because right now NFTs are JPEGs and PNGs stored elsewhere, and you just have hash for it, right? But these guys, they're like, okay, but we want to have the proof that the NFT is just exactly this. And if you lose the PNG or whatever, you can just go back in time and reproduce the transaction again, and you get the same NFT all over. Yeah.
So I think what would be interesting is to have so we had with Tree Trunk we had made NFTs into web pages with then, I mean, we had zero knowledge proofs for authenticity. So and ran that on IPFS, or using IPNS. So the interesting thing was, the big challenge was to have rendering of to have like movies, videos like that are basically injected into
The page.
into the page, right? So it's like, because you have to have the entire file, which is like really big, right? So it would be much better if you could inject it into there, and then something. So because it's IPFS, so I could see that you could run this sort of like rendering engine and then inject that into a frame on an IPFS web page. That's where I think Cartesi could actually shine for that, because now you can prove that all this stuff is actually properly updated, and the quote unquote GIF or the generative art is actually correct. So it's like, because we had someone with an artist who wanted to go, oh, I want this to be in the morning, it should look like morning, and then the evening, it should look like in the evening. And I was like, okay, then we need like a 5 GB, I'm like, oh my God, this is but so with Cartesi, that would be a actually entirely doable. So
yes.
With verifiable authenticity of the generative art. So that I can totally see as a very cool use.
Have started
Yeah,
hitting me as
100%.
well. Interesting. This is very interesting, Gabriel. And do share more material if there's something which we can share with our community. Happy to do that as well. And do join Baseline Slack as well if you have the time and explore what we're doing. So yeah, if there are no more questions, I guess we're towards the end of today's show.
Oh,
Guys,
I have one more. I have
Yeah,
one
yeah,
more.
Andres.
Gabriel, when are you showing up again on the for the L2 standards working group?
The
Interesting
following,
question.
not the next one because I'll be flying, but the following one.
Okay.
just
Mentioning last
guilt
time that
tripping you,
I'm
my friend. Just
Yeah.
guilt tripping you.
Yeah, when I had
So
this prep
sorry,
call
man.
with him, he was mentioning it that I've been missing some. Is Andres going to be there on the show? I said, yeah, probably yes.
And he was like, oh shit.
So yeah, interesting. And yeah, thank you, Gabriel, for what you're doing with the open source communities as well. And Cartesi joined EA as well, and you guys have started doing things there as well. So kudos to all the work. And we hope to get you back here sometime. Maybe we deep dive a little more on some of the use cases where baselining could come together, and vice versa. So yeah, that brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you all for the the amazing thoughts and the very engaging discussion. See you next week with another hot air topic, which is ZTNA. hope to get there very soon. And yeah, do subscribe to our channel and follow us on Twitter as well. See you all next week. Cheers.
Hey guys.